I always believed my life was flawless. From the outside, my career in advertising looked enviable, everything perfectly aligned, achievements, respect, and financial success. My name, Adrian Cole, was whispered with admiration in boardrooms and conference halls. Yet one casual remark from someone I barely knew would soon unravel everything I thought I understood about trust, loyalty, and love. It happened at a gala I had attended on behalf of Vantage Creative, the company I had dedicated the last decade of my life to. I had been recognized as the most effective advertising strategist, the person who generated more revenue than anyone else in the firm. The evening was meant to celebrate me, to celebrate success. But life, as it often does, had other plans. By my side was my wife, Lila, a woman I had married 6 years ago. Lila was everything a man in my position could hope for: graceful, intelligent, effortlessly charming. Yet beneath the surface of her polished appearance, I would soon discover a world of deception I could not have anticipated. She had a smile that captivated me, and a mind that kept me on my toes. Our life together had been a whirlwind of spontaneity, travel, and mutual ambition, though I often preferred simplicity. Casual wear, fast cars, and adrenaline-fueled sports. Lila loved to challenge my routines, and I welcomed it, until the night changed everything. The gala was grand, crowded with celebrities, politicians, and key business figures. I had just received an award for the record-breaking funds I had raised for the Magnus Worth Foundation. Flashbulbs illuminated the room as I stepped up to accept my recognition. But my attention was stolen by a woman I had never met before. She had long blonde hair, a presence that seemed cinematic, almost surreal. She approached me, smiled, and uttered words that would haunt me. "I always knew you were the one." I froze. The world around me blurred as her voice resonated in my mind. I did not remember her. There was no past encounter, no shared moment that I could recall. But something in her words pierced through to a memory I couldn't place. Reporters crowded around, capturing every second, every expression. Lila remained composed, professional, yet I noticed the subtle tightening of her jaw, the slight narrowing of her eyes. The night ended with a drive back to our home. Lila and I left quietly, the Mustang gliding along the streets, and I couldn't shake the vision of the blonde woman surrounded by cameras. She was a phantom from a life I didn't live, yet her presence suggested consequences that would soon ripple through every aspect of my existence. The following morning, the city already seemed different. Curious glances followed me in the cafe, and even at my office, whispers about the mysterious woman began circulating. My assistant, Mara, approached cautiously, asking if I had seen the news. "There's a story," she said quietly. "About the blonde woman?" I denied everything, trying to maintain composure, but the seed of doubt had been planted. Who was she? Why claim such familiarity? And most terrifyingly, could her words be a harbinger of a reality I hadn't considered? I reached out to my attorney, Montgomery Byrne, who had guided me through past complications in business matters. We strategized carefully, documenting my movements and communications. Every message, every call, every interaction was now part of a meticulous record, in case this situation spiraled into something more dangerous. Lila supported me, albeit with a careful distance, understanding that our personal and professional lives were now entangled in a delicate, precarious balance. Even as the weekend approached, I found moments of temporary relief. Lila and I sailed along the coast, away from reporters, away from the prying eyes that seemed to haunt every step. But the shadow of that mysterious blonde lingered, her words echoing in my mind. I could not let go of the notion that she had some intent, some purpose, behind her strange proclamation. Soon discussions with my partners began. Rumors about the woman, Billie Jean, as she was identified in the press, were already affecting perception. There were concerns about potential negative publicity, about her claims of a past connection. I had to navigate these waters carefully, maintain my professional reputation, ensure financial stability, and protect the fragile trust within my marriage. Each day brought a new revelation, a subtle shift in alliances, a threat lurking just beneath the surface. The first serious challenge came when Mara informed me that Billie Jean was insisting I had known her 4 years ago. My denial, though firm, seemed insufficient in the court of public opinion. The office felt tense, colleagues whispering, clients waiting for signs of weakness. I had to act decisively. A legal meeting was scheduled, involving Montgomery Byrne, the investigative team led by Sarah Price and her husband, and the relevant parties in Florida, where the situation was escalating. I began assembling a comprehensive dossier of my communications, financial records, and movements. I wanted proof, not assumptions, because the blonde woman's story threatened to rewrite reality itself. Was she lying? Or had I somehow forgotten a crucial fragment of my past? The uncertainty gnawed at me. Yet amidst the storm, Lila's presence, though strained, provided a sense of grounding. Even at home, life began to feel surreal. Lila grew more playful, attempting to normalize our evenings with laughter and intimacy, yet every smile was tinged with unspoken tension. The household seemed suspended between ordinary life and the mounting chaos outside. It was clear. The world I thought I understood was crumbling, and I had only begun to perceive the labyrinth of lies, claims, and hidden motives that would define the months to come. One woman's words had shattered the illusion of normalcy, and the path ahead would require patience, resilience, and an unflinching determination to uncover the truth. The first calls to Florida were tense. Sarah Price, the lead investigator, and her husband Chris had agreed to meet me personally. On the drive to the restaurant, I couldn't help but notice the way my Mustang hugged the corners of the road, how precise every maneuver felt, yet no skill behind the wheel could prepare me for what awaited at the table. The small Mexican restaurant seemed innocuous, almost quaint, but inside, every glance, every handshake carried weight. Sarah and Chris introduced themselves formally. Sarah's sharp gaze assessed me immediately, a professional intensity that made clear she didn't tolerate deception. Chris, more casual, fidgeted with a menu as if seeking comfort in the mundane. I laid out my case. I had never met Billie Jean before that gala. I had always been faithful to Lila. I had no knowledge of any child she might claim was mine. Yet every word felt fragile under the weight of her public assertions. The conversation quickly shifted to evidence, or the lack thereof. Billie Jean had provided a vague timeline, photographs, and emotionally charged statements, claiming that I had not only known her, but that I was the father of her child. My denial seemed logical, yet in the court of public perception, logic had little power. Sarah's questions were methodical, designed to probe for inconsistencies, but I had nothing to hide. The problem was proving absence, proving that I hadn't been somewhere or done something, was infinitely harder than confirming a simple fact. Meanwhile, Lila's behavior was changing. At home, she oscillated between playful lightness and moments of distant contemplation. I could tell she was questioning, silently analyzing every nuance of our marriage. Our conversations became delicate exercises in diplomacy.
"Maybe she's lying," Lila suggested one night, tracing a finger along the rim of her wine glass. "But what if there's something we don't know?" Her voice betrayed the tension I felt, her uncertainty mirroring the growing chaos outside our door. The investigation intensified when Sarah located additional witnesses and potential evidence in Florida. My longtime friend Jordan agreed to assist, convinced of my honesty. He believed Billie Jean had ulterior motives, perhaps seeking financial gain or personal attention. His support was invaluable, though it came with the stark reminder that perception often outweighed truth. Simultaneously, the press began reporting on the unfolding drama. Every morning brought a new headline, each one casting shadows on my character, my career, and my marriage. The gossip was relentless, a tidal wave threatening to drown the stability I had built over decades. I could not leave it unchecked. I needed to act, to respond, but carefully, legally, and strategically. The first tangible confrontation came when Lila, frustrated and exhausted by the media frenzy, questioned my integrity directly. "Adrian," she said sharply, "how do I know none of this is true?" Her voice was calm, but edged with pain. I had expected anger or blame, but this was more complicated. A quiet, cutting doubt that threatened to dismantle the trust between us. I realized that even if I proved my innocence legally, rebuilding Lila's trust would require far more than documents and DNA tests. In the midst of this, Sarah arranged a preliminary DNA test. The results were inconclusive, offering only 79% certainty. Not enough to definitively prove anything, yet enough to leave room for doubt in the public's eye. The media seized on this ambiguity, spinning narratives and feeding speculation. I felt the walls closing in, the relentless pressure of time, and the constant reminder that my life was no longer my own.
Meetings with Montgomery Byrne, my attorney, became almost daily rituals. We dissected every statement, reviewed every possible legal avenue, and prepared for the worst. Each meeting revealed the delicate balance I had to maintain: protect my reputation, ensure my financial security, and safeguard Lila from the emotional fallout. Every decision carried weight, every misstep could have permanent consequences. Amidst this storm, I tried to focus on my own agency. I reached out to my colleagues, reassessing business strategies and financial partnerships. It was clear that some clients had begun questioning my judgment. The whispers of doubt were subtle but pervasive. Arthur Harris, one of the senior partners, warned me bluntly. "Perception is reality. If this drags on, it could cost us everything we've built." His words were harsh, but accurate. The tension at home reached a breaking point when Lila discovered discrepancies in some old yearbooks, photos, and college memorabilia. Small things she used to trust me on without question. She confronted me directly. "Have you ever been unfaithful? Have you ever lied about anything?" Her voice trembled slightly, betraying both anger and fear. I felt a knot in my chest tighten, the realization settling in that even total innocence could not automatically restore faith. With Lila increasingly distant, I knew the Florida trip was inevitable. I would have to meet witnesses, present evidence, and face the possibility that Billie Jean was not just lying, but manipulating every element of truth to construct her narrative. Sarah Price promised diligence, her experience a reassuring anchor amidst uncertainty. We planned to examine every document, every phone record, and every bank statement that could either vindicate me or expose the depth of deception. During the flight, I reflected on the fragility of identity. All my achievements, my careful planning, my dedication to truth, it all seemed tenuous, threatened by a single compelling lie. The adrenaline of business had never prepared me for this level of personal scrutiny. I felt exposed, vulnerable, and acutely aware that life's certainties could dissolve in moments. Arriving in Florida, the climate itself seemed a metaphor. Humid, oppressive, unpredictable. The investigative team greeted me with efficiency, their professionalism sharp against the backdrop of my anxiety. I noticed small things, the way they cross-referenced information, the meticulous care in verifying identities, the strategic planning for each meeting. It was methodical, almost surgical, and it gave me hope that truth could eventually emerge from the chaos. Even in these early stages, the emotional toll was undeniable. Lila's absence on this trip was a silent but powerful indictment of the strain on our marriage. Her decision to stay behind, despite my pleas, reminded me that trust, once questioned, is not easily restored. Each day, I had to navigate a maze of legal, personal, and psychological challenges, all while maintaining the appearance of composure. The first meeting with key witnesses revealed contradictions in Billie Jean's story. Her descriptions of past encounters were vague, dates didn't align, and her claims of prior communication were unsubstantiated. Yet the media would not pause to consider these inconsistencies. They thrived on the spectacle, on the drama of accusation, and the tension of unresolved conflict. By the end of the first week, I began to realize something vital. This was not just a legal or public relations battle. It was a test of character, resilience, and the ability to navigate human deceit. Every step required patience, every decision demanded clarity. And above all, I had to reconcile the growing gap between the life I thought I knew and the labyrinth of lies that now threatened to redefine it. The Florida investigation quickly escalated beyond anything I had imagined. The initial meetings with witnesses, document reviews, and preliminary DNA tests were just the beginning. Sarah Price and her team were thorough, too thorough perhaps, but I needed that rigor. Every record we reviewed, every phone log, every credit card statement became a piece of the puzzle, a potential line of defense. Yet even as the facts began to align in my favor, the emotional toll on me and Lila was becoming impossible to ignore. Lila had remained in California, refusing to come with me. I understood her hesitation, but the separation weighed heavily on both of us. Our phone calls were tense and fragmented. She was angry, hurt, and exhausted by the media storm, yet she still demanded the truth. "Adrian, you need to prove me wrong," she said one night over a choppy connection, her voice barely concealing the tremor beneath her controlled tone. "I can't keep wondering if I've been blind all these years." Her words were not accusations. They were desperate pleas for reassurance, for a reality she could trust. Back in Florida, every interaction with Sarah and Chris underscored the stakes. The first witness we interviewed painted a picture that seemed almost convenient for Billie Jean. But under scrutiny, inconsistencies emerged. Dates didn't align, timelines contradicted, and small details, a hotel check-in here, a dinner receipt there, slowly revealed cracks in the narrative she had built. I watched Sarah meticulously document everything, her pen moving like a scalpel across the paper. Chris, meanwhile, handled the logistics and kept the tone of meetings calm, preventing tempers from flaring. Despite the progress, the psychological strain was relentless. Each morning, headlines greeted me like ambushes.
Adrian Blake denies affair. But is he father? Corporate star or charade? Billie Jean speaks, my child, my truth. Even when the facts tilted in my favor, the public perception remained dangerously ambiguous. I realized that my reputation, built painstakingly over decades, could be undermined by insinuation, rumor, and selective storytelling. I was fighting a war not only for the truth, but for my very identity. Lila's absence became more palpable every day. Her silence was heavy in our calls. Her voice, once warm and playful, now carried an edge of guardedness. I need to see everything, she demanded, referring to every piece of documentation, every witness statement, every phone log. I need to feel certain, Adrian, not just hear you say it. Her skepticism, though justified, cut deeper than any accusation could. I was not only defending myself, but simultaneously struggling to prevent the fracture of our marriage. The case took another turn when the preliminary DNA results arrived. 79% certainty was inconclusive, and Sarah stressed that it was not enough to present in court or public forums. It was a cruel kind of torture. I was legally exonerated from definitive proof, yet socially condemned to suspicion. The press gleefully reported the ambiguity, spinning headlines that made it sound as if guilt was probable. Each article felt like a new wound. Each public glance or whisper in my presence felt like confirmation of the mistrust now embedded in my personal life. At the same time, new witnesses surfaced. People who had observed Billie Jean in circumstances inconsistent with her claims. They corroborated my alibi, confirmed my whereabouts, and undermined the fabricated details she had circulated. Yet I knew that in the court of public opinion, evidence mattered less than drama. Each small victory was overshadowed by the ongoing narrative she had created. A narrative I could not easily dismantle with logic alone.
Lila's doubts became an unspoken tension in our marriage. I felt her eyes on me in every photograph released in the media, in every interview she might have watched. I could not blame her entirely. Trust, once shaken, requires more than facts to rebuild. It requires time, patience, and consistent demonstration of integrity. Things that, in the eye of the storm, felt almost impossible to deliver. Sarah arranged a meeting with Montgomery Byrne and William Maitland, my legal counsel, and a seasoned Florida attorney known for his unwavering advocacy. The discussions were detailed and exhaustive, covering every angle from civil litigation to public relations management. We debated the wording of press statements, the timing of DNA tests, and the strategy for approaching key witnesses. Each decision carried monumental weight, because the wrong move could trigger further public distrust or legal repercussions. Amid these strategic discussions, I couldn't escape the emotional impact. Memories of my marriage, the life Lila and I had built, and the joy that had once been so effortless, now clashed violently with the current chaos. I recalled our first date, her laughter echoing across a quiet park, her hand in mine. Those moments felt distant, almost unreal, compared to the fear, doubt, and suspicion now saturating our interactions. I realized that no legal or financial victory could fully restore what was lost, unless trust and emotional intimacy were rebuilt from scratch. Billie Jean, meanwhile, remained a persistent shadow. Her public statements, carefully curated photographs, and selective interviews painted her as a wronged woman fighting for her child. Even as Sarah and I gathered evidence, the media amplified her narrative, often ignoring the contradictions and inconsistencies we uncovered. Each press cycle reinforced the challenge. Proving truth was not enough. I had to combat perception, and perception was merciless. As the investigation progressed, I also faced internal conflicts. My team at work began questioning my focus. Despite assurances of loyalty, whispers circulated. Partners like Arthur Harris reminded me bluntly that a cloud over my personal life could spill into the business, affecting clients, contracts, and future projects. The pressure to remain calm, composed, and articulate in the midst of personal upheaval was exhausting, yet essential. I realized that to survive this storm, I needed to compartmentalize, emotionally, professionally, and socially, without appearing detached or indifferent. One afternoon, Sarah uncovered a critical piece of evidence, a communication between Billie Jean and a former acquaintance, suggesting a possible motive for her fabrications. The document hinted at financial leverage, personal revenge, and manipulation. It was the breakthrough I had been waiting for. Yet even with this proof, the challenge remained. How to present it effectively without further inflaming the media or creating new complications with Lila. Lila called that evening, her voice, weary yet firm, pierced through the fatigue I felt. "I saw the headlines again," she said. "I don't know if I can take this anymore, Adrian. How do I know any of it is true? How do I know you're really telling me everything?" I took a deep breath, realizing that no legal document, no phone record, no witness testimony could instantly heal the emotional rift. I spoke candidly, trying to convey not just facts, but the sincerity of my intentions. I promised to share every detail, to be fully transparent, and to prioritize her trust above all else. The following week, we began coordinating the formal presentation of evidence with Sarah, Chris, Montgomery Byrne, and William Maitland. Each step was meticulous, cross-referencing documents, verifying witness credibility, and preparing for every possible question or attack. I began to feel a sense of control returning, not absolute, but tangible enough to sustain hope. Yet the personal stakes were highest. Lila's continued skepticism, the media glare, and Billie Jean's relentless public campaign meant that even minor missteps could have disproportionate consequences. I understood that the resolution would not be a single moment, but a series of careful, deliberate actions, legal, personal, and emotional. By the time we scheduled the formal confrontation with Billie Jean, I had learned something vital. Truth alone would not suffice. I needed strategy, composure, and patience. Every interaction had to reinforce my credibility, not just to Sarah and the legal team, but to Lila, to the public, and to myself. It was no longer just about defending my name. It was about reclaiming my life from the grip of deception and fear. As I prepared for that meeting, I felt a quiet determination settle in. The stakes were immense, but so was my resolve. I had faced corporate battles, public scrutiny, and professional challenges before, but this was different. This was personal. Every heartbeat reminded me that integrity, transparency, and resilience would be my only weapons in the days to come. And deep down, I knew that if I survived this, the foundation of my life,
my marriage, my career, my identity, would emerge stronger, tempered by the fire of betrayal and the clarity of truth. The day of the confrontation arrived with a tension that felt almost tangible. The meeting was held in a small, neutral conference room, chosen to ensure neither party could claim an advantage. Sarah Price and her husband Chris were present, along with Montgomery Byrne and William Maitland representing me. Billie Jean walked in, her posture a mixture of defiance and controlled nervousness. Flanked by a couple of media representatives, she insisted on bringing as witnesses to ensure transparency. The weight of the moment pressed down on me, but I kept my composure, knowing that any emotional reaction could be interpreted as guilt. Sarah began the session, outlining the rules. Every statement would be recorded, every claim scrutinized, and any evidence presented would be documented and verified. The tension in the room was palpable. Billie Jean immediately launched into a narrative of my supposed infidelity and the existence of a child that, according to her, had been conceived during a clandestine affair. Her voice was calm, almost rehearsed, but her eyes flickered occasionally with uncertainty. I listened quietly, absorbing every word, noting the inconsistencies in her story. Dates didn't match, locations contradicted, and minor details that she thought would lend credibility were easily disproven by receipts, phone logs, and witness statements. I remained calm, responding only when necessary, providing facts and evidence without letting emotion cloud the presentation. Then came the turning point. Sarah revealed the communication she had uncovered between Billie Jean and her former acquaintance, hinting at motives of financial gain and personal revenge. The documents included emails, text messages, and financial statements that made it clear that Billie Jean's narrative was not a matter of memory or misunderstanding. It was deliberate manipulation. She had fabricated timelines, staged events, and misrepresented interactions to create a false impression. Billie Jean's composure began to crack. Her gaze darted around the room, realizing that her carefully constructed story was unraveling. Questions were asked, discrepancies highlighted, and evidence presented systematically. Slowly, her defenses fell apart. Every attempt to deflect or spin a narrative was met with irrefutable documentation. Montgomery Byrne spoke with precision and authority, outlining the legal consequences of false claims, potential fraud, and the risks of public defamation. William Maitland, known for his commanding presence, emphasized the seriousness of manipulating public perception and the ethical responsibility Billie Jean had to tell the truth. It was a formidable combination of legal expertise and meticulous evidence, leaving her little room to maneuver. Throughout the meeting, I observed the subtle shifts in Lila's perception. Even from a distance, through Sarah's updates and video conference feeds, I could sense a gradual softening of her skepticism. The facts, presented in a clear and irrefutable manner, began to bridge the gap between doubt and belief. Lila's patience, strained though it had been, allowed her to witness the truth unfold before her eyes. As the confrontation drew to a close, Billie Jean finally admitted that some elements of her story were fabricated. She acknowledged her attempts to gain financially and emotionally, though she did so reluctantly and without full accountability. The legal team made it clear that further deception would result in immediate consequences. The room, once charged with tension, now held a sense of resolution. The storm that had loomed over my life for months began to dissipate. In the days that followed, the results of the more accurate DNA test arrived.
The conclusive evidence showed no biological connection between me and the child Billie Jean had claimed was mine. Relief washed over me, but it was tempered by the realization of how close I had come to losing everything, not just my reputation, but the trust and love of the person I cherished most. Lila reached out after receiving the results, her voice soft, yet carrying the weight of weeks of fear and uncertainty. "Adrian," she said, "I see you now. I see everything you've been through.
Thank you for being honest, for fighting not just for yourself, but for us." Her words were a balm to the anxiety and pain that had haunted me. The public fallout was managed carefully. With Sarah and Chris guiding the communication strategy, we issued statements clarifying the facts. Headlines shifted from accusations to exoneration, and the media coverage, once aggressive and speculative, became factual and subdued. It was a calculated victory, achieved not through confrontation alone, but through meticulous preparation, patience, and unwavering commitment to truth. Meanwhile, my relationship with Lila began a slow but steady process of healing. Trust, once fractured, could not be restored overnight. We had long, honest conversations, discussing fears, doubts, and emotions that had been suppressed during the chaos. Lila's guardedness gradually gave way to openness, and together we navigated the delicate balance between forgiveness and accountability. We realized that our bond had endured not because problems never arose, but because we faced them together, refusing to let external forces dictate the integrity of our connection. Professionally, the resolution allowed me to refocus on my career and business ambitions. Inspired by the clarity and lessons from the ordeal, I moved forward with plans to establish Anthony Alexander LLC. With Sarah, Chris, and trusted team members, we built a company founded on transparency, ethics, and innovation. Every project, every campaign, and every client interaction was approached with the understanding that reputation and integrity were paramount. The past months had imparted a profound lesson. Success was meaningless if it came at the expense of truth or personal values. Financially, the strategic partnership with Caesar Anthony flourished. By merging resources and expertise, we created a dynamic enterprise with balanced ownership and shared vision.
Lila, now fully invested both emotionally and professionally, took an active role in overseeing operations, contributing to decisions, and ensuring the company culture reflected our values. The synergy of personal trust and professional collaboration became a cornerstone of the business, reinforcing both the company's stability and our relationship. In the quieter moments, I reflected on the journey, the betrayal, the chaos, the fear, and the eventual triumph. Every challenge, every sleepless night, and every difficult conversation had shaped me, making me more resilient, patient, and discerning. I recognized that the ordeal had not only tested my integrity, but had deepened my understanding of love, trust, and responsibility. Billie Jean faded from public attention, the threat she posed neutralized by evidence and legal clarity. The experience left scars, yes, but it also reinforced the strength of what truly mattered: honesty, accountability, and the people who stood by me when the world seemed against me. Lila and I rebuilt our lives not as a return to the past, but as a foundation for the future, stronger, wiser, and united. As I watched the sun set over the California coast, I felt a sense of closure, tempered by gratitude and cautious optimism. The chaos that had once threatened to dismantle everything I valued had been transformed into lessons, insight, and a renewed commitment to living authentically. My life, once overshadowed by deception and doubt, now held clarity, purpose, and hope. And for the first time in months, I allowed myself to breathe freely, knowing that while challenges would inevitably arise, I had the resilience, wisdom, and support to face them head on. Together with Lila, my partner, my anchor, and my truth.